The story of John Price and the fact that he was imprisoned for 12 weeks, I think, and he's now been released. His sentence has been reduced from 1 year to 10 months, and uh, he was prosecuted for dredging the river Lugg, which runs round his house. And he's a farmer, and he claimed that the river was in danger of flooding, and it certainly looks from the pictures as if it's something that could be a threat both to his land and to his house. He claims that he has all the necessary paperwork, but the Environment Agency wasn't interested and was pursuing a sort of showcase. And although the story is horrific about the environmental damage, the fact that he says he has all the necessary permits and that these were ignored by the police who were investigating suggests a lack of communication and a lack of coherence in the Environment Agency. And you wonder, well, why is that? And then you look at who was running that ministry. It was Therese Coffey. And did she get a handle on other things which were extremely damaging to the environment? Sewers, for example, and sewage going into the rivers and into the sea. No. The problem is that paperwork has become a minefield, and bureaucracy is something that, unless you are a professional in that particular bureaucratic area, you cannot negotiate. A farmer on his own, with plenty of other things to do, is unlikely to have been able to work out which bits of paper were relevant, which bits of paper were not relevant. It's not an excuse, but it is an explanation about why people find themselves in this sort of mess. And if we had a little more clarity, a few less bureaucrats, a little less bureaucracy, and a little more clarity, our life would be much better, not just in terms of agriculture, but also in terms of the NHS and in terms of teaching. And we need to make a commitment at the start of any new parliamentary term to cut back bureaucracy rather than to increase it, to cut back on what is unnecessary and what is repetitive and what is duplicated, and what actually, when it comes down to it, no matter how clear it may be on paper, is considered unimportant. Because that's the reality. The reality is you receive a letter which looks as if it's significant, and it turns out not to be. You receive a letter which looks as if it's not significant, and it turns out to be significant. And ordinary members of the public simply cannot know. I received stuff last week, I think, or the week before, from the county council. It looked completely trite, but it turned out to be quite significant. And I was then able to chase it up about stuff happening or threatened to be happening on my road. And nobody in the area, we'd all received this trite communication, nobody in my area realised it was important until we started digging into it. And it was only because somebody is more persistent than I that any of us dug into it. It's simply that bureaucracy doesn't say what it means, bureaucrats don't say what they mean, and ordinary people are caught in this mess. Now, John Price was impulsive and obviously loved Tonky toys or Tinky toys. What are they? Tonka toys when he was little. Why would you not? And here was an opportunity to get a bulldozer and play. And he was a fool. And he's done immeasurable damage to the ecological system and to the life of salmon in the area, destroying fish eggs, destroying habitat, destroying opportunity for decades to come. But and you could say, well, he should have known better. But the paperwork, he says he had paperwork. He had the necessary permits and no one was interested because there was an overriding expectation and an overriding control, and that was more important. Well, of course it was. So why produce the fiddly bits of paper? Because you have to keep bureaucrats in office, in pay, because in the end, I think we've come to the conclusion that bureaucrats are more important than the people who actually do the work. Bureaucrats are there to support people like John Price, to give him information, not for him to have to go around the place begging for the right information. Which bureaucrat do I listen to? This one or that one? And we all know the problem of, the electrician will be here at some point between 8 and 6. You must have an intelligent adult present on the site in order to accept that visit. It's absurd. Utterly absurd. And the nonsense of the knee-jerk bureaucracy in Britain at the moment has got to a point where it is idiotic. If you're taking an exam, you have to be in the exam room at such and such time. Well, of course you do. Of course you do. But people taking exams, they want to be there, don't they? Don't they? But the intimidation that surrounds that with the bureaucracy is too much. You know, you've now got people who are employed specifically to stop children cheating. There was a point when we used to teach children not to cheat, and we used to expect them to do this on their honour. Where's that gone? At what point did our national exams become some sort of test about honesty and not about competence? At what point did we assume every student is dishonest, every student is potentially like a shoplifter? We have store walkers walking around exam rooms. At what point did we turn our society into this, where we don't trust people and where we don't use people's intelligence, initiative, and skills, where we assume everything is at the command of the person at the top, the bureaucrat at the top? In the end, it's not possible to run a society like that. In the end, well, first of all, this is a tyrannical model. But secondly, we can't spend our lives assuming everybody is deceitful, everybody is wrong, until they're given approval. That's not the way to run a country. It's not the way to run a life.